One of these two subwoofers won't make a single sound straight out of the box. Not 1 watt, not 1 beat until you add a separate amplifier. The other one, plug it in and you're already hitting bass. Today we're figuring out which approach is actually worth your money, the Alpine S2-W8D4 or the JBL BassPro SL. If your factory speakers sound like they're playing through a tin can, you've probably already found your way to these two. The Alpine S2-W8D4 and the JBL BassPro SL are two of the most recommended 8-inch subs for anyone stepping into car audio for the first time, but they're built on completely different philosophies. One is a raw driver you build a system around, the other is a finished, self-contained unit that just needs power. Same size cone, similar price range, totally different experience. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one actually fits your car, your budget, and how much bass you really want. Let's start with what you're actually holding. The Alpine S2-W8D4 is a bare subwoofer, just the driver, no box included. Its cone is a carbon fiber and polypropylene blend, which basically means it's light enough to move fast but stiff enough to resist flexing under heavy bass hits. Around the edge, Alpine uses what they call a ham-R surround, a rubber ring engineered to let the cone travel further without tearing. In plain terms, that's bigger bass swings, without the sub falling apart by year 2. JBL goes the opposite direction. The BassPro SL is a shallow, proprietary 8-inch woofer sealed inside its own molded enclosure, under 3 inches tall. There's no box to buy and nothing to build. It's designed from the factory to slide under a seat and disappear. So right out of the gate, you're picking between two philosophies. Alpine hands you a serious driver to build a system around. JBL hands you a finished product you bolt down and forget about. Now let's talk numbers translated into plain English. The Alpine is rated at 300 watts RMS. That's the power it can handle continuously, with a peak of 900 watts for short bursts. But here's the catch. Alpine doesn't include an amplifier. With a sensitivity rating around 83 dB, this sub actually wants real power behind it to sound its best, which is why Alpine itself recommends pairing it with their S2-A60M, a 600-watt mono amp. Its frequency response stretches from 23 Hz up to 215 Hz, meaning it can dig into that chest-rattling sub-bass territory most factory systems never touch. Vents built into the frame and backplate help the motor shed heat on long, hard-push drives. And the dual voice coil design means you can rewire it for different amp setups down the road, which matters if you're planning to expand your system later. The JBL flips the entire equation. It's rated at 125 watts RMS with 250 peak, but that amplifier is already built in. An efficient Class D unit that runs cool, barely draws current from your electrical system, and comes pre-matched to the driver. So sensitivity isn't something you ever have to shop for or worry about. Its frequency response runs 35 Hz to 120 Hz, so it's not reaching quite as deep as the Alpine, but it's tuned specifically for that punchy mid-bass range where hip-hop and pop bass lines actually live. There's even a built-in bass boost dial for an extra 9 dB at 70 Hz. Right at your fingertips, no separate equipment required. So how do they actually sound? This is where the enclosure and the power behind each one really shows up. The Alpine, once it's properly boxed and amplified, digs deep. We're talking sub-30 Hz rumble, the kind of bass EDM drops and trap hi-hats are built around. Bass you feel in the door panels before you consciously register it. There's real headroom here, so hip-hop bass lines stay tight and controlled instead of turning to mush when you push the volume. JBL isn't trying to compete in that arena, and honestly, it doesn't need to. People who've actually installed one under a seat consistently describe it as tighter and cleaner than its size suggests, with a warm, rounded punch that suits rock and pop especially well. It does start rolling off below roughly 60 Hz, so if you're chasing skull-rattling trap bass, this isn't the sub for that. But for daily driving, for finally hearing what your factory speakers have been missing this whole time, it's genuinely convincing. Installation is really where these two show their true colors. The Alpine is passive, meaning it does nothing on its own. You need a box, an amplifier, power and ground wiring, an RCA run from your head unit, and a remote turn-on wire. That's a legitimate weekend project or a trip to a professional installer, especially once you're building or buying a custom enclosure to match your trunk. The JBL is powered, so the amp is already wired in. If your factory head unit has speaker outputs, you can often connect it directly through its high-level inputs, and it'll automatically sense when to turn on and off, no remote wire required. For someone doing their very first install with basic tools and a Saturday afternoon, the JBL is dramatically less intimidating. Quick pros and cons, no bias. Alpine's pros, more raw power, deeper bass extension, genuine upgrade flexibility, and premium-grade cone materials. The cons. You're buying a box and an amp on top of the sub itself. It eats more space, and installation takes more effort and know-how. JBL's pros, an incredibly easy install. Zero trunk space lost, one less thing to shop for since the amp's built in, and it still sounds tight for daily listening. The cons, less power on tap, nowhere near as deep. And if you ever want to go louder, you're replacing the whole unit instead of just upgrading one piece. On paper, the Alpine looks cheaper, and standalone, it usually is. But that price tag doesn't include a box or an amplifier. So once you add those in, your total system cost can actually land higher than the JBL. The JBL costs more upfront, but that number includes everything: enclosure, amplifier, and driver. In one purchase, no extra shopping trips. Quick heads up if you're shopping right now. JBL has also released the BassPro SL2, which shares the same core specs as this SL model with a few refined controls. So don't be thrown off if that's what shows up in stock instead. Long-term, Alpine has the edge on upgrade potential, since it's a standard component you can rewire or pair with a bigger amp down the road. The JBL is more of a set-it-and-forget-it purchase. Both carry standard manufacturer warranties, so double-check current terms before you buy. Let's make this simple. Buy the Alpine S2-W8D4 if you're building a real system. You want room to grow, and you don't mind the extra step of picking your own box and amp. It's the better long-term bass machine, period. Buy the JBL BassPro SL if you want noticeably better bass than your factory speakers without giving up trunk space or your entire weekend. It's the easier, more forgiving choice by a wide margin. For most people watching this, first-time buyers who just want their music to actually hit without turning their car into a side project, the JBL BassPro SL is the smarter overall buy. It's not the most powerful sub on this list, but it delivers real, usable bass with almost none of the hassle, and that's exactly what most people are paying for. If this comparison helped you out, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because we test and compare the best car audio gear every week. You'll find the latest prices and links for both subwoofers in the description below.